did send it to Russ.
Where is it?
He had another meeting.
Oh, I think he was someplace really.
No.
What I can figure out is if the air's not on. If the air's not on, what is that noise? Is it just the lights? That's, you know, I'm fine. I'm comfortable personally. I'm just curious all the time.
I think so too.
Let's see, is there somebody else who's not here? Who's not here? Everybody else is here. Okay. Oh, Brad isn't here. Brad Cousineau. Yeah.
We don't get.
We were there last.
Sit there.
No. Mr. Warburton.
I already ordered meat and chips. Well, there's 34 people going there so far.
We're probably going to, hopefully he's going to zoom through this tonight. Okay. All right. Good enough. Yeah. Good evening. I'd like to call this May 6th meeting of the Northfield Township Planning Commission to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Where is it?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please call the roll, Mr. Stanilecho.
Mr. Iaquinto. Here. Ms. Chick.
Here.
Ms. Shockley.
Here.
Mr. Kuzno.
Barely here.
Mr. Roman.
Here.
And I'm here present, Mr. Stanilay.
Okay, great. Mr. Dignan is absent with notice.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks.
And so we do have a quorum. We have Laura Krebs here in place of Doug Luan tonight, so she's representing Carlisle Wortman. We've got Mary Bird here from the office downstairs, and she's preparing our packets these days, so be watching for her emails. And then we have Lisa Lumble, our recording secretary, Jim Nelson doing the taping, and a couple members of the public. So
Make a motion, we approve the agenda.
Support.
okay, we have a motion to support, approve the agenda as distributed. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, so that was by Mr. Roman and support by Ms. Chick. Okay. We now have an opportunity for a call to the public. Do we have anyone from the public would like to speak to us at this point? Okay, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address, and turn on the microphone if it's not on. Thank you.
David Gordon, 5558 Helmer Road. I'll try to talk really fast since there's only 3 minutes. If you were at the polls yesterday, you might have been lucky, and I got a copy of this document from a friend of mine that was passed out at the polls. The person that was passing it out refused to give me one, and then refused to identify who they were. And there's nobody's name on this. There's no identification of who wrote it or who paid for it. It strikes me similar to what was distributed by and paid for by developers 10 years ago when we had these same kind of conflicts in our community. I don't tend to give credence to things that are completely anonymous like this. But it raises some questions, such as what happened in Northfield Township. And there are people here who think there's something going wrong in our township, and I've heard a lot of talk about how there's, we're losing population. I went and looked up the census just now. We have 7 fewer people in 2010 than we had in 2000, according to the U.S. Census. That's 7 people. According to our budget, we're in good financial shape, and most of the people who live here actually kind of like it. So what's happened to our township? People are living here and having a good time and enjoying themselves, as far as I can tell. Who are these self-proclaimed Northfield neighbors is another question they raise. And it's me. It's the dozens of other people who've come up and spoken in favor of the master plan here. It's the scores of people who have written to you and to the Board of Trustees. It's the hundreds of people who've signed petitions, and it's the thousands of people who rejected the rezoning of the Leland property 10 years ago and said we don't want to turn our farmland into strip malls and condos. Then this document goes into the facts and fiction, and the very first thing they talk about is that the 1,475 rooftops isn't a fact. I have a document here, which we got through the FOIA request. This is a letter from Biltmore to the township manager that not only talks about 60-foot lots on homes, but quarter-acre zoning, which would work out to 1,475 homes. It talks about extending the municipal sewer and creating a community water system, all of which would cost tens of millions of dollars. This is a public document. It's available for anybody if they want to go see it on northfieldneighbors.today. This is a document from our township planner to Biltmore, recognizing 1,475 homes. And this is only the beginning of all the lies that are in this document that got passed out. And I guess what I'd like to say is just repeating lies don't make them true. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have another one? Who? Okay, come on up.
Good evening. My name's Craig Warburton. I live at 450 West Joy Road. It's ridiculously hot in this room because the air conditioner for the server room discharges into this space, and that's blowing hot air right past that pop machine. And the server room is completely unlocked and unattended, so there be all your communication equipment. That was not my topic for the evening. I looked through the packet and I was a little, I'm sorry that Mr. Lewan is not here, but I'm going to address his letter anyway. It goes through very quickly a process to amend the master plan that concludes with, based on survey results, a full review of the master plan will be conducted focusing on the results of the public opinion survey. You're hiring a company that's predisposed to a result. The only thing that makes them worth 16 grand for a 6,200 piece sampling is that they will tell you exactly what you want to hear. There's nowhere in their curriculum vitae a single citizens group for which they worked. They work strictly for municipalities. I don't blame you for hiring a ringer. They'll do exactly what you want. Nowhere in their literature do they describe the taxpayer as a stakeholder. The only stakeholder they reference is government, whether that's your sort of government or school government or other civic bodies. I'm a little confused by an organization that maintains their data collection as a 501c3. Created to address stakeholder pressures facing schools, local governments, and nonprofit organizations, blends custom research with scientific methodology, quality benchmarks, and impact analysis. Like most statisticians, I think if you hire one, they're going to tell you exactly what you want to hear and what you hired them to tell you. There's no question that this is a formal request from one developer to amend our master plan, and there's very little question in my mind that there's an ample amount of documentation that you are addressing it. That this has absolutely nothing to do with a relative obsolete condition from the 2012 master plan. It's not obsolete. You have not continued to address the subsections that were addressed in this document. If this document was so inaccurate to the whim and the desires of the population, it would seem imprudent to me to amend it with anything less than the same or better data collection than was used then, which would be much more sampling, many more public hearings, lots of planning fairs, not one predisposed fixed result. I mean, this is a town full of public opinion pollsters. You can find someone that would represent the middle if you wanted to. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's too hot to stay. See you guys.
Thank you.
Johnson, 7777 Sutton Road. I don't even know where to start. I know some of the people in this room may be part of the group that's behind the flyer that was passed out. It may just be some lone lunatic in the township. I don't know. It's hard to know where to start. The main lie that's in this is the opinion that a small group of people in the southwest corner of the township are wholly responsible. The only Northfield neighbors we got are 5 or 10 people down on Helena Road. I've seen the mailing list. They're from all over, northwest, southeast, northeast, center of the township, Whitmore Lake itself. And evidence to that was in the referendum done back in 2003 by a 1,627 to 782 vote. The attempt to rezone in favor of Grand Sackville was overturned, and that was voted down in all 3 precincts, not just the southwest corner where 5 or 10 people live. There's another lie in here which says that the rezoning that was overturned, the Grand Sackville rezoning, was only across from the high school. It actually extended all the way down into the area encompassed by Biltmore today. They wanted to do about 5,000 houses, as I recall. David talked about one issue of 1,475 imaginary rooftops that nobody had submitted a plan to do yet. Well, if you look at the www.northfieldneighbors.today website, we've got a heading called 1,475 rooftops, and you can see the proof in terms of the letter Letters exchanged between David Stolman of Biltmore and Howard Fink, our township manager, in which he discusses how they're going to use the PUD ordinance with a 20% open space, which yields about 368 acres at 4 acres per acre, 4 homes per acre, which is 1,472. So if you want to say we were wrong in claiming 1,475 homes, you're right. It was only 1,472. I really wish somebody had signed their name to this. We're, you know, the Northfield neighbors, as I say, we're all over the township, and we're not afraid to show up in public. Whoever's passed this out, I wish they had a little courage.
Mr. Nelson, could we get a copy of that? I haven't seen it. I did. Okay. Did everyone else here at the? No. Anyone else seen this? No. Okay. We'll make some copies and pass it out. I appreciate you bringing this to us.
Oh, we put it on the website too. It's easy to find.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe that would be easy. Thank you. Okay. Moving on. We have correspondence. In your packet, you saw a letter from Fett Farm, and they have withdrawn their application, so we won't be dealing with that anymore. And then Scioto Township, we got their notice of their master plan adoption, and so if anyone here wants a copy or wants to look at that, Mary has it in the office. So, okay, we'll move on to reports. Oh, does anyone have any questions on those correspondence items? Okay. Reports, Board of Trustees. Ms. Chick.
The Board of Trustees met for a workshop on April 28th. We had some discussion items. I think the only item of interest to the Planning Commission is basically the information that's in our packet today regarding the citizen survey from Cobalt. So that'll probably be discussion later. So that's all I have.
Okay, great. Thank you. Mr. Dignan's not here, so there's no ZBA. Staff report. Ms. Bird, do you have anything that you would like to share with us? No? Okay. Mr. Fink, welcome. Okay. Planning consultant report. Ms. Krebs, I know you have some things.
Just a couple items. On April 17th, Doug and others had a pre-application meeting with Al Dente. They've submitted plans for review. I received them today, so that will be seen in an upcoming meeting. On the 24th of April, Doug attended the Cobalt interview with Marlene, and she's going to discuss that interview process later in at least the outcome of it, I guess, later. And just a couple other items. O'Donnell Electric has resubmitted their site plan, and that's ready for a future agenda. And then, and kind of something that's been hanging out there, the Carter Lumber, the potential trucking business, we haven't received anything submitted formally yet. So.
Okay. Mr. Iaquinto, do you have a question?
Where is O'Donnell Electric?
That's a good question. It is right down here on Main Street.
No.
Where the plan? Oh, the application?
Well, both. Where are they physically located, and then where is it at in the process?
I don't have the exact address with me.
Is
They're
it-
off Main Street.
It's a-
Right across the street. It's a yellow building right across the street.
Okay.
And then the application, they had their pre-application, they submitted a first site plan submittal, and we asked them for additional information. They've resubmitted, and now they've corrected all our initial items, so they're ready to come before you.
So O'Donnell Electric is the small building that is right next door to Barbara Down? The one that's being reconstructed? Okay, excellent. So they're new to the area?
Yes.
Excellent. That's awesome. Thank you.
Okay. And they'll be on our June 3rd agenda. Okay. So we have no public hearings tonight. We'll move on to old business. So the zoning map and ordinance. Ms. Krebs has some information for us on this.
In your packet, we provided a memorandum regarding the ES Enterprise Service District. If you remember last year, we talked about eliminating the RO district and formulating a new ES district, which we did. After we looked at the map a little closer and we saw that there were actually some single-family residential structures that probably would not be converted to an office use in the future. And if you remember right, we tried not to make anything non-conforming.
Allison, can you push the microphone closer? Thank you.
Sorry. So we tried to make nothing non-conforming. So in order to do that, we added just a single text item that allows for single-family dwellings within the ES district. And also you have an amended map that demonstrates the existing zoning at the bottom. And you can see that at the very southern end of the ES district along Main Street, adjacent to US 23, there's some split zoning in that area. There's some that's zoned partially ES and partially ag. Those are actually vacant and residential properties in that location. There are 11 properties that would be changed to single-family residential as part of this text amendment, or map amendment, excuse me, which would make them a conforming situation. If you're okay with these minor changes to the ES district and the map, we would ask that you set a date for a public hearing.
Okay. Mr. Stanilecho.
If I'm correct, there is no zoning right now in those areas because it was eliminated, so it's not really true that they are zoned a particular thing right now.
Well, they are zoned half ES, and the map was changed. It's half ES and half vacant, or half agricultural.
But I thought the township board approved the elimination of the RO zoning district, and that this one has never been approved.
That I don't know.
Correct?
My understanding, well, they approved, we didn't deal with a map at the time. We only dealt with the actual ordinance. And so while we did get rid of the RO and put all of the RO into the ES, we didn't deal with the map. And then it was determined that we had to deal with actually a map. So that was brought in too. And in order to make and because there's houses there, it wasn't appropriate to have them in ES and not allow them as a permitted use. So now we're making a change to both the text and the map.
I understand that my first meeting on here this was done before I got on here.
Mm-hmm.
And it was explained that the RO district has actually been eliminated and that we were going to adopt this ES district, but then there were some properties that were not included in it properly. And so I just want to make sure that the RO district has been eliminated and that this district has not been yet adopted. Is that correct?
Not this one,
Okay.
not the map.
All right. Thanks.
Right, so we will schedule this for public hearing. Do we have any other questions about this at this time? Okay, so we'll just schedule this for a public hearing, likely June 3rd. Okay. So moving on, we have the citizen survey and master plan item. So you've got the memo from Mr. Luan and Ms. Krebs. Did you have anything you'd like to talk about at this point, Ms. Krebs?
I just want to let you know that I did contact the references that were provided for Cobalt Communications. I spoke to 3 of the 4 that they had listed on their proposal. All of them have used them multiple times. They plan to use them again for their survey needs, and they all had great things to say. Highly recommend. So.
And I was actually there at the interview. Mr. Fink's gone. Mr. Luan was there. Yeah, Ms. Chick was there. And they're an impressive group, I believe. 501c3 is helpful in that it kind of controls their costs, and they don't necessarily, they're not trying to make money off of the people that they serve, but anyway, I felt comfortable with them and that they knew what they were doing. We also talked about the process also. I'll let Janet share what anything you'd like to say about them at this
Yeah,
point?
I was impressed as well, and I found them very objective and very professional. I mean, they're experts. This is what they do. They had a whole list of people that they had dealt with and governments that they had dealt with within Michigan and some outside of Michigan. And, I mean, they, I don't think they're going to, I have to dispute the comment that they're going to give us the answers that we want. They're not going to give us the answers that we want. They're going to give us the answers that they get from, or the results that they get from the people that are answering the survey. This is what they do. It is a scientific survey. And I know it was also mentioned about, having someone within the townships and pollsters and surveys. I would actually have a problem with having someone within the township do a survey for us, because then I would have the suspicion that they would not be objective. These people have nothing to gain other than doing this for us and doing us a service. So I have no problem having them do this for the township.
They gave a presentation for the Board of Trustees at their last meeting also, and I attended that. And that's where the information in your packet comes from. This was not exactly a PowerPoint, but it was what they passed out for the Board of Trustees. And at the meeting that we had with Cobalt, we discussed the process. And while they originally intended to send out 1,500 surveys to a randomly chosen but representative portion of the township, we thought it would be better to go ahead and survey every registered voter in the township, so that no one can say, well, I didn't get a survey. And we're making sure everyone has an opportunity to answer the survey. So the cost went up, obviously, to do that, and they did discuss this with the Board of Trustees. And my impression is that the Board of Trustees also would like to see every registered voter surveyed, so that we've made sure that we have collected the best set of data that we can get. Now, they're likely to only get the same percent, but they'll get a lot more of the same percent. They were talking about getting 1,500, they would get, I think, 25 to 30% of them back. If they do all 63, 28 registered voters, they'll still get 25 to 30% of them back, but they'll have a lot more data to deal with. And they're capable of weighting that data based on the demographics that we're looking for. So rural, if we get an overabundance of, they're able to weight it based on the population in the different areas of the township. So I was comfortable with that methodology, and they are planning to prepare an initial set of questions with demographic questions, all of those sort of things. And then we'll have a group take a look at that, make sure it's asking the questions that we need asked, and then we'll be able to add questions or adjust the questions.
Yep. And regarding the questions, they also said that they are willing to take input from anyone, from the public, from anybody who wants to give them issues or items that they would like to have in the survey, but they will construct the questions so they're not leading. And as far as getting the surveys out to the voters in that number, it also gives them very accurate data. Very accurate.
Right. So as far as questions go, they will write the questions, but they will include concepts that we're interested in hearing back from the public about. So, say, I don't know, say we're interested in land preservation in certain areas, or development in certain areas, or parks, or whatever we feel we need the data on. Those concepts are going to be considered for the questionnaire. So if anyone out there has questions, would like to submit concepts or questions, we will not be writing the questions. The survey people will do all the questions, all the mailing, all the gathering of the information, and the township's out of it. So it won't be able to be, you know, fiddled with. Biased, correct, biased.
Yeah, and they also put in controls on it so that each survey that goes out will have an identifying number so that it's not, you're not able to duplicate. Or one person can't answer 2 or 3 or 4 times, so.
Right. So, do we have any questions from the group about this at this point? Commissioners? Oh. Mr. Stanleycho?
I mean, I think that doing it the way that this company is going to be doing it, the presentation, the references, it sounds like we're going to end up getting the best information that's possible. You know, the gentleman that came up and complained about the company for the survey is that, you know, the number one people that they're actually getting the information from are the taxpayers. That they are the group that we're targeting. So, you know, obviously these companies are hired by municipalities to do a job for the taxpayers and for the citizens, and that's the information that we're trying to collect from. So, I think it was kind of disingenuous for him to make a comment like that, but obviously it holds that opinion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so this is going before the Board of Trustees at their next meeting, and they'll make a decision on whether they would like to spend this amount of money for this survey, and I hope that they will, so that we can have some objective information. And so we'll see what happens. They are meeting on May 12th, is that it? Next Tuesday? Okay. And then if they approve, then we'll start moving forward with the questions and getting that ready. Okay? Okay, so what else do we have to talk about? Oh, an intent to plan letter was sent out, taking a look at the entire, well, saying that we're going to take a look at the entire township. And that's all I have on that currently. Okay. Anything else from anyone about that? Any comments, concerns? No? Okay. We'll move on to new business then. The site plan review manual needed some tweaking, so I'll let Ms. Krebs talk about that.
Well, after speaking with Marlene, and it's on, let's talk louder. It's as far as it'll go. Just a few minor changes. They are highlighted in here. The majority of them are citations. Now that the ordinance is on Municode, all of the reference numbers have changed, so we modified those to be the Municode numbers. Additionally, we talked, just a few changes that were made were based upon review application, just noting for staff and for anyone else that would be putting together the packet or submitting a document that the Planning Commission requires full plan sets for their review. And we just noted that in a couple different locations. But the majority of the modifications were the sections, the new section numbers for Municode. So okay. I'm happy to entertain any other revisions that you would like to see made since we're opening it up for review.
Any questions? I know you have on page 8 of the manual, it says review the township engineers and the township planners and outside agencies' evaluations. The issue we had at the last meeting was that we didn't have the fire marshal or the fire chief's report. Should
I can add him.
That be added to, if that's appropriate, depending on what the
yeah, usually he would
if
review
it's appropriate.
it, so that's fine.
Okay. Otherwise, it looked okay to me. Now, this has to go for a public hearing, too, because it's associated with our zoning ordinance, and so we'll have to schedule this. There is some corrections, minor administrative corrections to the, to some of the applications at the bottom, and it's just basically phone numbers and things, but otherwise, it's good. It's good to go. Any questions or concerns? Mr. Stanilecho?
The only thing I would like to make sure is that, this flow chart, that before things start going through the whole process, all the required documents to actually move in that direction are either in planner's hands or, in the office hands, so that as we're going through this process, all the documents are there. So when it gets before us, we're not sitting here asking for documentation that's not there, because I think it's a waste of time. So basically, the process should end up being, it'll flow like this as long as all of the documents are there, I'd say by a week before, like if it's going to come before the Planning Commission the week before, or else it's not going to continue on to our schedule. Just so that we don't end up here asking for stuff asking for consideration for information we don't have available to us.
Ms. Chick?
So are you asking that before project concept meeting with the Township Planner Zoning Administrator, or where are you asking for it?
Well, I'm just saying just generally along the whole path.
Oh, okay.
But in particularly before it gets to us.
Gotcha.
So that as it goes through, not going, well, we're going to schedule it for next week, and with anticipation that there is going to be this document there. We don't want to have that happen, because then we get stuff at the last minute. If it's not there by a certain time, then it doesn't move forward. It goes on the next agenda.
Correct.
I think it's only fair to everybody to treat them the same way, and to us.
I agree with that. We have had some issues, and so Mr. Rushlow and Mr. Luan have been taking more care to make sure that people don't get on our agenda prematurely. Sometimes we have these problems with the stuff slipping through the cracks, but there's also going to be a checklist, which isn't in here, but there's going to be a checklist to make sure that all the little boxes are checked off and we're not missing anything.
Is it going to be part of this, or is it going to be separate from? Okay.
I was told it was going to be separate for the office, just to to make sure that that's all there, because this lays out everything they need. The question is, there needs to be a checklist as it comes in the office to make sure that it's there for the meetings. So we won't have that problem. Okay, so that will be available to go on to our next regular meeting for a public hearing, June 3rd. Okay. Wow, we're already to minutes. Okay. Does anybody have any changes to the April 15th minutes? Page 1. Page 2. I gave a couple changes to Ms. Lemble already, but I'll say it in public here so you all have it. In the paragraph under 9, old business, page 2, it's the third paragraph. It starts regarding parking. At the last sentence, I changed the last although to even though. And then in the next column, the second paragraph from the bottom, it said, he said an oil water separator can be installed, period. And then the DEQ issues permits, so the installed, period, and then capital T for the. Anybody have any changes on page 3? No? Page 4.
Make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I have one more change. Sorry, Sam. Under Northfield Township Green Infrastructure Mapping Workshop, the last sentence should, after the comma, will say, Luan said, even though the resulting map of resources would not specifically be an official document, it would be appropriate to use in preparing a revised master plan. That sentence was kind of messed up, so we're changing that. Okay, now,
My motion still stands.
okay, we have a motion by Mr. Iaquinto.
Support.
Support by Mr. Stanilecho. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. All right, policy review and discussion. I would just like to ask everyone to let me know when if they're not going to be around on on vacation. I am not going to be here June 3rd. I'll be out of the country. So if we don't have a quorum sometime, it's nice to plan for that. So if you know you're going to be on vacation at any particular time, just let me know and we'll make sure that we plan our meetings around that if we don't have a quorum. Okay. And the other thing I wanted to mention, which I wasn't sure where the most appropriate place would be for this, but I'll do it here just so the rest of the commissioners know that Mr. Stolman asked to have a quick meeting to see where we were at with the master plan process. So we did have a meeting, and we told them that we were not considering the smaller area anymore, and we were going to look at the whole township. So we couldn't really tell him anything, and that was the gist of it. So I just wanted to make sure that the rest of the commissioners knew that happened.
Did you indicate it was in the meeting?
Yes, I was there, Mr. Fink, Mr. Luan, Mr. Stolman, Mr. Stolman's engineer, I can't remember his name, Scott Betzold, and Marilyn Engstrom. Did I get everybody? Okay, and that's who was there. Okay. So, next, call to the public. We have an opportunity again to speak to us. Anyone want to speak? 3 minutes again.
David Gordon, 5558 Hillman. I was curious if you want to inquire of your planner why they believe we only got one bid out of 7. The planner thought it would cost $10,000. We got a bid for $10,000 from one company. I didn't think that the presentation they did was unprofessional, but I had nothing to gauge it against because I didn't see any other people make a presentation. So I would encourage the board and the planning commission to see if they could get a second bid before they move forward with this company. It would just make the appearances better. There was a discussion of having a group get together to look at the questions and the proposals that are going to be placed in front of the survey people to make their questions from, and I would like to volunteer my services as a member of the public to be at that meeting, because I haven't seen, I've seen a lot of meetings taking place between various members of the boards, but I haven't seen any members of the public involved there, although you are all members of the public. I was curious when the meeting took place with Mr. Stallman from Biltmore, because I was going to ask, since our township manager has been intimately involved with Biltmore since the very beginning of them coming in here, I was kind of curious what the update would be on their options and how that sits with the community, and I don't see anything about that on the township website, which is surprising since it's such a big deal for our community. I had a question that this notice of intent to plan, so basically we're doing the master plan all over again. Is that if that's the concept, I would urge that we go through the same process we went through the last time before we rewrite the entire master plan. And just to get back to this scurrilous document that was anonymously distributed at the polls, they have a laughable assertion in there that subdivisions are going to lead to lower taxes. And they talk about the Adler and Wildwood subdivisions coming into our community, and how that brings businesses to the township. Well, I don't recall the businesses that those subdivisions brought to our community. And I don't believe I saw my taxes go down as a result of them coming in here. There's plenty of evidence to the contrary that subdivisions are a net loss for a community, and the only way you can help pay for all the services they want is through development of businesses, which may or may not show up. So if the board would be, planning commission would be so nice as to actually address some of those issues, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we discussed, well, and since it's a quick meeting, since we discussed a Cobalt and no other companies bid on it, and Cobalt's references were fine and their bid was fine, we don't know that it will just delay things to go ahead and try to get another company to bid on it, and who knows where they would come from. So everyone was agreeable to moving ahead with this company, and the Township Board of Trustees heard them speak. So that's where we're at with the bid. Please submit questions that you would like, and we'll consider that at a future time. And I don't know anything about the flyer, so sorry. Does anyone else have any questions? We'll move on here to comments from the commissioners. Mr. Roman, do you have anything?
None tonight, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kuzno? Mr. Stanilecho?
Just want to make sure that everybody keeps the men and women in uniform in their thoughts and prayers. Their sacrifices are what's allowing us to have this free exchange of information. Have a good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Ms. Chick.
No, I have nothing tonight, thank you.
Mr. Iaquinto.
Yes, people reference a 2003 referendum. That was 12 years ago. Many, many situations have changed in this township, along with many different people have changed in this township. So, just want to make that statement. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you for the comments we've had from the public, and a good meeting. So thank you. Our next meeting will actually be May 20th, but it will be a workshop meeting, and we are having the Huron River Watershed Council come, and all the public is invited, but please RSVP so we have enough cookies or whatever we need to have. But it will be here from 7 to 9, and Chris Olson from the Huron River Watershed will be here to do this green infrastructure workshop for us. So people out there in TV world, make note.
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Iaquinto, support by Mr. Stanilecho. All in favor of adjourning, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? No. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Awesome.